So the first thing we're going to cover in this video to stay alive much longer in Battlefield 5 simply is cover rotation. And this is identifying any object that you can use as a firing position and something that you can hide behind to obviously fire from and cover up the majority of your body, so you make yourself a much harder target to hit for any enemy. Now, you obviously need to prioritize and identify where are you trying to get to. So say we're playing the map now and we want to get to B flag. This is what I'm going to show you now. 2, after you've identified where you're trying to run to, you need to then identify while you're running the different types of cover you have available to yourself to either 1, use when an enemy shoots at you and you need to get to that cover quick so that you can then return fire from, and 2, so that you can obviously run to that cover, so you've always got cover to get behind as quick and when you need it, basically, and therefore you can stay alive longer. So if we were going to run to B flag from here, the first points of cover we have is the left here. Of course, you don't want to run to there because you want to run to B, but if an enemy engages in fire with you from anywhere in front of you here, you have a quick option here to get up, get behind cover and return fire, showing only, leaning around the corner, showing only a bit of your head. You have these pillars as well, where if an enemy jumps down into this empty corridor, you can instantly get behind and you at least can cover half of your body and make yourself a much harder target to hit. The chances are the enemy's going to put a few bullets into this pole, and therefore you'll be able to miss a few bullets yourself and still likely win that gunfight. But if you're running to B flag, you've got those 2 bits of cover. If you need to, you can crouch quickly behind here. Running, it's literally just running to any bit of cover, just so you've always got something, covering part of your body, no matter how much it is. Literally anything, just like this. Even by here, just crouching, so you've got the stairs covering most of it, the wall. If you're going to push in here, you want to slide to the barrels, so on and so forth, to the wall, for example, and that's basically what, cover rotation is. Always identifying the next piece of cover you can run to, so that you can quickly get behind when an enemy surprises you and engages you in a gunfight. And that covers the first point. Now the second point to staying alive links directly in with the first point of cover rotation. I don't really know what term you use for this. I was going to go for a term something to do with 4 walls, or basically I've just called it shielding in this video. And basically 4 walls or shielding, what I mean by that is you'd always need to have, so you've got 4 walls, you've got your front, you've got your right, you've got your left, and you've got your back. Don't worry about obviously above or below you. Majority of the time you're going to be fighting enemies on a level, flat playing ground, and therefore just worry about the 4 walls around you. Now, when I say shielding, as you obviously rotate to and from cover, you've always got yourself up against an object. So what I mean by this is, in this case, here I have 1 wall up on my shield, which obviously is in front of me. If I turn obviously and face to my right, I've got the shield, I've got the 1 wall on my left, but of course, as long as you're touching an object, you've always, in this case here, I've got 1 wall up. No matter which way I'm facing, I can cover one of my 4 sides, and therefore, I've got a quarter shield up, if you like. And this is what I mean by shielding. As you run to and from cover, or as you're playing the game at all, whenever you're playing, you always want to try have at least 1 wall up in your shield. So if you're running, say, from the spawn when you start the game, run along this wall if you have to. You've got your left side covered, and it means that's a side you don't have to worry about an enemy shooting you from. Even if you're in a scenario here where you've got you've got this one side covered on your left, you can at least still hear enemies coming before, so you've got time, but you're covered. They can't shoot you. You're behind cover, right? So this shielding, what I mean by shielding is essentially always keep 1 wall up in your shield, and the more you can have, the better, because there's less directions you have to worry about enemies coming to kill you from, and basically you protect yourself, and this helps you stay alive way longer. And obviously, if you are touching an object and having at least 1 out of your 4 walls up in the shield, then you're likely also doing cover rotation really well, because you're standing next to an object which you can hide behind, so you're ticking off 2 boxes with 1 by doing this. Now, some objects, just to finish this off, can obviously help you in more than one way. For example, on underground in the trains, luckily you've got 2 walls here. you can literally, if you stand in one of these corners, you literally are covered on 2 sides, and that's 2 out of 4 sides. So basically you can identify loads of different pieces of cover in any map you play on any game mode in Battlefield 5, and always have as a rule of thumb, try keep 1 wall up in your shield out to the 4, and any more you can get than that, the better. 2 is normally what you can get, for example, in any corner. Of course, I'm not saying go and sit in a corner and stay there, but as you're running to and from cover, with the first rule I said, you know, every object, try and keep yourself against it. So you always got 1 wall hidden. And like I said, as you're touching it, you can always turn and cover any side you want. But always try to keep yourself touching and have 1 wall up. Now the third way to stay alive much longer is also a very simple and obvious one, but that is simply leaning, and using the leaning mechanic, where you can obviously lean right and left around any corner or any object you can use as cover, which obviously therefore directly links into the first 2 points I've said about in this video. Simply any object you're running to and from behind and therefore need to return fire to an enemy, it's a good habit to always practice and learn to lean from behind every single object you can get behind. This simply, as I will show in just a second, will literally show sometimes literally just your head, which gives the enemy the only thing they can aim at is your head, which if the enemy is at a long distance away, for example here, or any distance further, the further away that enemy is, the harder it's going to be for them to keep their recoil and, you know, their recoil control on target to hit your head. So it's, you know, it's very, very important that you use the leaning and use it every single time you can when you're going to return fire. Not many people do this, but even if you are a low-level, low-skilled player or a new player to Battlefield 5 and you have a bad aim, or you're still getting used to the game, or you're trying to practice recoil on any gun, doesn't matter what gun you're using, if you lean around a corner and you're only showing your head, you can literally beat any player in the game, no matter how much, if they've got 1,000 hours played, 2,000 hours played. You can beat any player in any gunfight in the game if you literally lean around an object and you show only head. You might have terrible aim, but if say you're aiming now at a level 500 player and you're a level 1 player with crap aim, you can literally probably miss half of your mag. You could probably have that level 500 player, you know, out in the open. You've got their full body to shoot at. You can pretty much, if you lean around any object, no matter your skill level, you will give yourself a lot more chance to win any gunfight. And this is something any person can do, and it's a really easy skill to do. It's literally just pressing the buttons on your controller and just remembering to do it whenever you're behind cover. So make sure you do this. So the fourth way to stay alive longer is to do with positioning. And I don't mean positioning as in when you're running and gunning all the time and I'm on about how you're moving around while just spraying like 50 enemies on B flag on underground. What I mean by positioning is fight enemies on your own terms. If, for example, your whole team has been wiped on B and you're standing here now and you're wondering, do you push up onto the flag? And if there's 10 enemies there, most likely you're going to die. Yeah, only the most skilled players in the game have a chance of jumping onto the flag and taking out all of those enemies. And even if you are the most skilled player, it might not be the most wise option in the long run of the game to get more kills. So when I say it may be wiser to fight enemies on your own terms, don't run up into the 10 enemies, move away, reposition, which is what I mean by positioning, take up cover behind an object. And this is not playing like a scaredy cat. This is literally being smart, but repositioning so that when those 10 enemies come down those stairs, you can take out 2 or 3 of them and have enough time in terms of the space they have between running to get to where you are to again, boom, reposition. You can take out another 2 or 3. So you've given yourself essentially time in between. You've given yourself a distance between you and the enemies, so you can't just get swarmed by the 10 enemies at once. And essentially this will allow you to take out 2 or 3 enemies at a time on your own. And if you do get swarmed, you've got time for them when they push you to again keep repositioning and take out the next enemy or 2. So also, when I talk about positioning and fighting enemies on your own term, say you have even 1 or just 2 enemies that are pushing you really hard. They know exactly where you are, right? Say I'm leaning behind cover, I'm doing everything right, but they're still, they're very accurate and they're pretty much going to insta-kill you and beam you, and you can't do anything about it. You're fighting on their terms then, because you're going to lose. So to fight on your own terms, which is the way you can get an advantage and an upper hand in this situation, is, like I said, repositioning to fight enemies on your own term. That's what I said before. For example, I'm getting pushed by 2 enemies here. They know I'm here. They can see me. Even if I lean around this corner, I've still got a high chance of losing the gunfight. Reposition in here. Of course, they could run through the doorway there and come through here. Most likely, they're going to come through here. You position yourself behind an object or anything, literally, even if it's by here, so that you can take the enemy out if they come that way, you know, or that way. But by moving away out of the line of sight of the enemy, they no longer know where you are when they come through that doorway. So they're now having to actually find you to get their sight on where you are, and therefore you can now catch them by surprise again, which will give you a chance to beat 1, 2, or even 3 players, maybe even more, because obviously they don't know where you are and they're not already pre-aiming where you are. So repositioning and fighting enemies on your own terms gives you back that element of surprise, so you can therefore take the enemy out and win the gunfight. And you know, I didn't say it then, but you reposition, you know the location where the enemy's going to come through. They're going to come straight into your crosshair and into your sight. Whereas the enemy, when they come through, you know, you could be peeking through there, you could be on the side there, you could be on the right, you could be behind anything here. But you can see exactly where they are coming from. So, fight enemies on your own terms. If you know you can't take them out in one scenario and one location and one situation that you're in, reposition, regain that element of surprise. They won't know where you are, you know exactly where they are, and this will allow you to win way more gunfights and stay alive longer. After you kill those enemies, then you can re-push again and see if you can try advance further on into the map. Now, what I also mean by positioning is using locations and positions within the map where enemies least expect you to be, so that you can easily surprise enemies and get kills, often without having to actually go into a 1v1 gunfight where you're both shooting at each other, in which case you will therefore, using these positions, be able to get kills on the enemy without them even knowing you were there. Now, the biggest position I would say on Underground literally is either any of the trains, because most people will be on B flag, looking down the right side, the left side. Even if they're looking down the middle or looking through the trains, you can easily stay in any of these corners, which covers one of the first 2 or 3 rules I talked about in this game, which is shielding and also using cover. But the best position on Underground, for example, for this point, is underneath B flag and behind any of these 4 staircases, simply because most enemies won't come under B flag. They will go up the stairs, over B flag, and down out to the other to fight all the enemies on either side of B flag. And this is very beneficial because any enemies who do come under here, you can obviously keep an eye on and take out in a 1v1. You're not going to get swarmed because there's never going to be loads of enemies under B flag. And this position also lets you, any enemies who run down off of B flag are usually going to be running either to, I think that's C flag over there and A flag over there. So in which case they're not going to come running down the stairs and turn around to go under B in most cases. And if they do, you're obviously going to be already facing them, so you can still beat them in a gunfight. But this position therefore allows you to see any enemy that comes off B flag and shoot them in the back as they run to either flag on either side. So therefore, this position allows you to take out as many enemies as possible without actually having to go in a gunfight. And you know, this is what you want as much as possible, because it just means you can rack up as many kills as you possibly can. Now, the final point I'm going to cover, and the 5th way to stay alive longer in Battlefield 5, covers target prioritization. So this is whenever this can be covered in with multiple different scenarios, multiple different situations, and you should have a prioritization list of enemies that you should kill first. So say, for example, on Underground, you're playing Conquest, you manage to flank underneath here, and you come around the back and you flanked all the enemies that are here looking out the window and watching the stairs. As you push in through here, right, forget any enemies that might be on your left or your right, you'll obviously check that first. But if you get the flank, your first prioritization is going to be to kill any enemies that are obviously facing in your direction, because they're going to see you straight away and most likely will already be aimed in at you, and therefore will be able to get their gun and sight and start firing at you quicker than anyone else who isn't facing your way to begin with. Your second level of prioritization then is going to be to shoot and kill any enemy that turns around, because they hear you open fire and they know there's an enemy behind them. So first, prioritize any enemy already facing you when you flank them. 2, then target any enemy that hears you after you open fire and therefore then turns around to face you, being the same as prioritization rule number 1. And then the third rule being you want to target any enemy that poses the biggest threat and is most likely going to beat you in a gunfight and kill you. Now, if you're using an SMG here and you're pushing on a flank and you're going to get in close and personal, the biggest threat to you is going to be anyone using, high damage and what do you call it? High kill, high TTK, so high time to kill weapons, such as a shotgun, which will ruin you in close range, or guns like the ZK Type 2A, for example. So medics and support players using shotguns. So after you prioritize anyone facing you, then you prioritize anyone who turns around to face you, and then obviously you prioritize anyone who will then be the biggest threat to you in terms of their class. So you take out the shotguns first because they'll one-shot you, then take out the any SMGs like Type 2As, ZKs, and then also you could move on to you can see what gun players are using and what but in general, snipers aren't going to be that big a threat to you. You can sort of leave them to last. If they're using a bolt action sniper, even a semi-auto sniper, they're going to be very it's going to be very hard for them to be accurate, especially when you're up close and personal, for example. So that's the 3 levels of prioritization you want to go for, especially when you're on a flank. But yeah, that's going to cover it for this video. I hope it has been very helpful. If it has, please leave a like and consider subscribing if you're not already. And I'll have a few more guides on the way very soon. So see you on the next one.
I think the girls with their nails done now.